Greetings and welcome to the Daily Diagnostic. Now, I know it's called the Daily Diagnostic, but that doesn't actually mean I'm going to be doing stuff daily. This is quite weird because I initially started out with something called the Fibroid Laboratory, where I was going to go deep in the trenches and start examining fibroids from a very scientific point of view. I was going to be looking at everything that causes fibroids. I was going to be looking at my own scans as well. But then I created the page and then did nothing with it. I think I wrote one article and then did absolutely jack all with it after that. I'm not quite sure what happened, but I tend to, or there is a tendency for me to create something and then not feel it anymore, if that makes sense. Now, and I'll tell you why that is actually, because I actually learned about my human design a couple of months ago, literally just recently. And it turns out I'm a 5-1 manifesting generator. Now, I'll probably share more about that with you as we go along. But it's absolutely fascinating just how accurate it actually is. And it's actually been very, very validating for me because there's some things I've been doing and I haven't had a clue why I'm doing it. Hold on, I'm just going to turn something down so I don't get disturbed. It explains why I do what I do and why I'm always kind of chopping and changing in regards to what I do and how I do it. So, as I said, this is the very first episode of the Daily Diagnostic. And I can assure you that if you told me probably only a couple of days ago that I'll be doing this, I would have said, no, it's just not my thing. But I just wanted to share with you who I am and what I do and why I do it. Now, it's well over 20 years ago where I studied nutritional therapy. It was something that was very profound for me. It was a time in my life where I needed that information, basically for myself. I was suffering with a whole host of issues, fibroids being one of them. I had severe heavy bleeding from literally day one that I started my period. And I had a whole bunch of health issues that were just incredibly frustrating, and I didn't know why I had them. I actually thought it was just part of getting older. I can actually remember telling myself that it was, yes, this is part of getting older. This is what we can expect. Things start breaking down. And I was only in my early 20s at the time. I'm in my 50s now. And I can see, when I look back, I can see the trajectory. It's very clear the timeline of the issues I've actually had. Now, I know if you read the articles that I've been reading, I'm going to be chopping and changing a lot. So there's no script here. I'm just going to be flowing whatever comes out of my mouth. Yes. So if you have read any of my articles, you'll see that there They're very on point, very scientific, giving you the reasons, the causes, and hopefully some really good information that you can start learning about. More or less where you're learning about your body, it's helping you learn more about your body rather. But the thing is, for a long time, I've been hiding something, because I thought it was my job to present myself as, perfectly healed, the expert. But behind the scenes, I've been struggling with my own personal challenges, and if anyone in the wellness industry presents themselves as perfectly healed, I can assure you they're lying, because nobody gets to a state of nirvana where you're like, ta-da, I've arrived and I'm healed. And no, it doesn't work like that. It's ongoing. Healing is ongoing. And so I thought, if I shared my thoughts by speaking what has happened in my life and relating it to your life, you'll see that I'm no different to you. I'm not, some up there expert. I'm right there in the trenches with you, sort of digging around, trying to work things out. It's just that I've had 8 years of research, and the research started simply because I had my own problems. And I've already mentioned that to you, what those are. But going back to the fibroid laboratory, which I started a couple of weeks ago, and then I think I wrote one post and didn't do anything else with. It was meant to be very logical, deeply researched, where I dived, like I said already, where I dived into my own bioresonance scans, because I actually use bioresonance. What you believe about that, or is obviously up to you, but that's what I use, the modality I use, because it is absolutely accurate. And I did that because I thought, if I provide more information around what's happening inside your body, give you a bit more information about estrogen dominance, metabolic health, and all that lot, it would help you. But actually, there's so much information out there. You don't need any more information. You really don't. So the reason I decided to remove that and do the daily diagnostic instead, but like I said, it won't necessarily be daily, because right now I just haven't got the capacity to commit to that. And this is one of the reasons I decided to do this, is because I wanted to share more about what's happening with my life, because then it's going to be it's going to help you see that, as I've already mentioned, I'm no different to you. So the fibroid laboratory hasn't actually gone. It's just morphed or evolved into something that's going to be much more raw and real. I'm still very much in the science and the data, because that's me all over. That is my 5-1 manifesting, generating human design. I love the science, I love the research. But on this podcast, we're going to be looking at, or we're going to be taking a diagnostic look at what is happening to women's bodies, specifically black women. Now, some people would call me a black woman. That's the label that I've been given, so I shall use it because a lot of women identify with being black. But specifically, what's happening with the black women's bodies, because we've been conditioned to carry the whole world on our shoulders, and trust me, that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years, and it's been burdensome, and I'm going to share more about that. When our boundaries are breached, when we are running on absolute obligation, duty, when we are starving ourselves of our own potential, I'm going to use my own life. I'm going to use my own family dynamics, whether they like that or not. that's their prerogative. And I'm going to share with you my own bioresonance scan, so you can see in real time the receipts of what chronic stress does to one's body and what it's doing to my body. So I feel it's important to share that with you, and to say that I'm going through my own stresses and strains, because when I look at when I look back, when I look at everything, when I'm looking at the overall picture, it's not all clinical. It's not all linear. I view the entire body, especially fibroids, because fibroids is my speciality. I'm absolutely obsessed with fibroids, and I'm sure I know a lot about fibroids, but there's probably even more to discover. But it's something that not you, it's something that I've been looking at from 5 different lenses. I view fibroids from 5 different lenses, which is the physical, the emotional, the mental, the energetic, and the spiritual. And again, I'll share those over time with you and what that actually means. I'll probably just break it down into little subsections to make it easier. But I'm talking from lived experience, right? It doesn't matter who you are, where you are. You could be in your car, you could be in the kitchen. This is real and raw, and I'll tell you why I'm doing this as well. I'll tell you what prompted it. I was speaking with my other half of 24 years now, and last night, he has a tendency to watch these videos where you've got these short clips of women who are crying in their cars because they don't know what to do. They're in perfectly good relationships. Their boyfriend or their husband, they've got the ideal life, but yet they're not satisfied. And he was asking me why that was, because because in his world he's satisfied with what he's got. He's got a good job, he's a builder. He looks after himself. Right now he's in recovery because he actually broke his arm, so he's not able to work. He's bored stiff, poor thing. But so we were having a good chat, and he just couldn't understand why women who appear to have everything, suddenly they're not happy, and it's almost like they're just continuously searching for something. And as we discussed that, I started thinking about my own life and how I recall having back in the past, I'm going, this is 20 odd years ago now, where I had a perfectly good relationship. On the surface it looked fine. We were living together. We had both had jobs. I had a good job at the time. I was making, I wouldn't say I was making okay money. We were able to scrape by, and he was perfectly happy. And we were together about, I think it must have been about 9 years. Yeah. So I'm going back to what am I looking at? I'm looking at the latter part of the 80s and into the 1990s. So that's how long ago it was. Yes, I am showing my age. But I think we were together 9 years. He was 3 years younger than me. He was 16 and I was 19 when we got together. So he was barely legal. And we soon started. It didn't take long before we moved in together. Actually, it was a necessity because I was being kicked out of the flat and I needed a flatmate, basically. So we was like, right, we're moving in together, kind of thing. And we were pretty stable for 8 years, and I think it must have been in year 9 where this discomfort started. I had no words for it. I couldn't explain what I was feeling. And this continued for quite some time, and to the point where I could no longer ignore it. And the worst thing happened, actually, is that his mum and dad booked us this exclusive 2-week trip to Kenya later that year, where I by then I'd made the decision that I had to leave him. And once they announced that, I thought, oh my God, no. And I wrestled for what feels like months on end. It was probably just a few weeks, because I thought, well, if I just wait until we go on this holiday, then perhaps I can, then dump him afterwards. But then something was in with it. There was this. It was almost like a pressure, this urge, this constant gnawing to, you've got to leave him. You've got to leave him. What's that? There was a series of box set I watched where I can't remember what it was called now. I have to look it up. But there was this voice telling them to do something, and they had to follow this voice. It was quite cryptic. It didn't actually explain what they had to do. It just told them what to do, and they just had to. It was almost like their intuition was telling them to do something, so they just had to follow that to intuition. And that's exactly what was happening with me. My intuition was telling me, you need to leave, or you need to, you guys need to break up. So eventually we did, and I lost my dream trip to Africa. I think it was Kenya. But my sanity was intact, because I felt I was losing it at one point. yeah, it was heartbreaking, but it needed to happen. And that's what this conversation that my partner and I were having, it sparked that memory. And then I started thinking about, well, how is it affecting other women? What's happening with them? Because I know there's been this shift lately. I felt it, this big shift, like I was a few years ago. I just felt like, again, that feeling, this yearning. I just wanted to do something. I just did not have the words for it. I know what that is now, and that's also something I want to be sharing with you, because I know what it is. I know why it's happening, and it's one thing I do know. It's not something we can avoid. It's not something we can avoid, and it's going to be uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable for me. I'm going to be honest. While I was going through my fibroid healing journey, I this all started well before I started my fibroid healing journey. But circumstances have kind of put the brakes on it, which has actually frustrated the heck out of me. It doesn't mean my purpose has gone away. It's just that it's been slowed down, not put on. I wouldn't even say it's gone on hold. It's just been slowed down, and because of what I've had to, the role I've had to step into, which is looking after my mum full time. And if anyone's a full-time carer, you know that is a real burden. You may love who you're looking after, the relative. It could be your son, it could be your dad, it could be your mum, it could be your daughter, it could be a relative, whoever. But the duty has fallen on you, and that's exactly what happened to me, where I became the main carer for my mum full time, and I literally had to put the brakes on everything I was doing. I was ramping up. I was looking to do talks, and now I just barely have the capacity to do anything, and it's impacted my health in ways I just couldn't even think of. And so I want to share a lot more about that with you, and also I'll just be sharing things as and when they come up as well. So like I said, there's just no script. I'm just talking off the cuff of what's coming in to my thought processes as I move along. So I hope you do join me in the daily diagnostic. It'll be good for you to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think, because sometimes when you're building a business, it can be very lonely. Especially when you're talking about fibroids. Everybody seems to be so quiet about it. It seems to be this internal suffering that women endure, unless you're on one of those big groups, which just seem to be trauma-focused groups, to be honest. That's what they appear to be to me. It's like everyone who's traumatized all come together, and they're supposed to be support groups, but all I see is just constant suffering, even though there are lots of ladies in there helping each other. I go into those groups every now and again, but I don't tend to stay in them long, because I'm focused on what I can do. I'm focused on empowering myself and empowering you to see, right, what is it that you can do, because you can, there's so much you can do. You know, nobody has to what's it, sort of like give up authority over themselves. But I've noticed that a lot of women do that. But that's a bigger subject for another day. But I hope you've enjoyed this, the first episode. Like I said, it's not going to be daily, despite the name. But I hope you get a sense, more of a sense of who I truly am, and that I am, you know, really focused on helping you, because I'm helping myself, and whatever I'm doing, I'm sharing that with you to help you as well. Because fibroids are, what I realised, they're for me personally, they've become the gateway to being who I truly am. That may not make sense right now, but it will in time, when I start sharing more about what I see going on. So I hope you enjoyed this first episode, and so until the next one, we shall. I shall be speaking more about the dynamics of what's happening with women, what's happening with fibroids, speaking more about hysterectomies and what I feel that actually means for us as women. But I'm only speaking to women who do not want that. If it's a hysterectomy is something you do want, then this is not going to be for you, because my thoughts are quite candid, and obviously I don't mean any offence to anyone, but you know, I'm not going to hold back just to you know, just because somebody's feelings might get hurt. It's as simple as that. So if you want truth, you don't want me to hold back, then this is definitely for you. But if you feel that you're going to be offended in any way, then obviously, you know, don't listen, don't subscribe, because I'm here for women who want to actually start healing. So until the next episode, I'll see you later.